Chapter 9. What happened to Cunegonde, Candide, the Grand Inquisitor, and the Jew. This Issachar was the most irascible Hebrew that had been seen in Israel since the Babylonian captivity. "What?" he cried. "Isn't the Inquisitor enough, you Galilean bitch? Must this scoundrel share you with me too?" So saying, he took out a long dagger, which he always had on him, and thinking his adversary was unarmed, threw himself on Candide. But our good Westphalian had received a fine sword with the suit of clothes the old woman had given him. Despite his gentle nature, he drew his sword and laid the Israelite out on the floor, dead as a doornail, at the feet of the fair Cunegonde. "Holy Virgin!" she cried, "what will become of us? A man killed in my house! If the police come, we're lost." "If Pangloss hadn't been hanged," said Candide, "he'd give us good advice in this extremity, because he was a great philosopher. Lacking him, let's consult the old woman." She was extremely prudent, and she was beginning to give her opinion when another little door opened. It was an hour past midnight. Sunday had begun, and that day belonged to the Inquisitor. He came in and saw the flogged Candide with a sword in his hand, a dead man stretched out on the floor, Cunegonde in a state of panic, and the old woman giving advice. This is what went through Candide's mind at that moment, and how he reasoned. If this holy man calls for help, he'll certainly have me burned, and he may do the same thing to Cunegonde. He's had me whipped unmercifully. He's my rival. I've already begun killing. My course is clear. This reasoning was swift and sure. Without giving the Inquisitor time to recover from his surprise, he ran him through and laid him out beside the Jew. "Now we're in an even worse predicament," said Cunegonde. "They'll have no mercy on us. We'll be excommunicated. Our last hour has come. How could a gentle man like you kill a Jew and a prelate within 2 hours of each other?" "Fairest lady," said Candide, "when a man is in love, jealous, and whipped by the Inquisition, he no longer knows what he's doing." At this point the old woman spoke up. "There are 3 Andalusian horses in the stable, with saddles and bridles. Brave Candide must get them ready. Madam has some gold coins and diamonds. Let's mount the horses without delay, although I can sit on only one buttock and ride to Cadiz. The weather is perfect, and it's very pleasant to travel in the cool of the night." Candide immediately saddled the 3 horses. He, Cunegonde, and the old woman covered 30 miles without stopping as they were riding away. The Holy Brotherhood came into the house. His Eminence was buried in a beautiful church, and Issachar was thrown into the garbage dump. Candide, Cunegonde, and the old woman had already reached the little town of Avicena in the middle of the Sierra Morena, and they were speaking as follows in an inn. Chapter 10. How Candide, Cunegonde, and the old woman arrived at Cadiz in great distress, and how they set sail from there. "Who could have stolen my money and diamonds?" said Cunegonde, weeping. "What are we going to live on? What shall we do? Where will I find inquisitors and Jews who will give me more money and diamonds?" "Alas," said the old woman, "I strongly suspect a reverend Franciscan who slept in the same inn with us last night in Badajoz. God preserve me from making a rash judgment, but he did come into our room twice, and he left the inn long before we did." "Alas," said Cunegonde, "my dear Pangloss often proved to me that the goods of this world are common to all men, that everyone has an equal right to them. Acting on that principle, the Franciscan should have left us enough to finish our journey. So you have nothing left, fair Cunegonde?" "Not a penny," she said. "What shall we do?" said Candide. "Let's sell one of the horses," said the old woman. "I'll ride behind Madam, although I can only sit on one buttock, and we'll go on to Cadiz." There was a Benedictine prior staying at the same inn. He bought the horse for a low price. Candide, Cunegonde, and the old woman went through Lucena, Chilas, and Lebrija, and finally reached Cadiz. A fleet was being fitted out there, and troops were being assembled to bring the reverend Jesuit fathers of Paraguay to reason. for they had been accused of inciting their tribes near the town of Sacramento to revolt against the King of Spain and the King of Portugal. Candide, having served in a Bulgar regiment, went through the Bulgar drills in front of the general of the little army with such grace, speed, skill, pride, and agility that he was placed in command of a company of infantry. Now that he was a captain, he boarded a ship with Lady Cunegonde, the old woman, 2 manservants, and the 2 Andalusian horses that had once belonged to the Grand Inquisitor of Portugal. During the whole voyage, they often discussed poor Pangloss's philosophy. "We're going to another world," said Candide. "It must be the one in which all is well, because I must admit that it's possible to complain about some of the things that go on in our world from both a physical and a moral point of view." "I love you with all my heart," said Cunegonde, "but my soul is still shocked by what I've seen and experienced." "Everything will go well," replied Candide. "I've already noticed that the sea of this new world is better than our European seas. It's calmer and the winds are steadier. I'm sure it's the new world that's the best of all possible worlds." "May God grant that you're right," said Cunegonde, "but I've had such horrible misfortunes in my world that my heart is nearly closed to hope." "You both complain," said the old woman, "but neither of you has known misfortunes like mine." Cunegonde nearly laughed. She found it amusing of the old servant to claim to have been more unfortunate than she. "My good woman," she said, "unless you've been raped by 2 Bulgars, been stabbed in the belly twice, seen 2 of your castles demolished, had 2 mothers and 2 fathers murdered before your eyes, and seen 2 of your lovers flogged in an auto da fe, I don't see how you can surpass me. And let me add that I was born a baroness with 72 generations of nobility, and then became a cook." "Madam," replied the old woman, "you don't know about my birth, and if I were to show you my backside you wouldn't talk that way. You'd suspend judgment." These remarks aroused intense curiosity in the minds of Cunegonde and Candide. The old woman spoke to them as follows.